Hey, Josh, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thank you so much, Jay, for having me.
So I'm really excited that you're here because you've got all kind of insights that I think are going to be really valuable to our audience. A lot of people are trying to figure out how do they get attention? How do they get in front of people? How do they get noticed? How do they, for lack of a better term, up their influence? That's the name of your website, which is really cool. And I've been digging into your stuff. Lots of really great wisdom. But before we jump into practical strategy and tips, I always like for people to have a little bit of perspective of who you are and where you got to where you are today, because each of us have our own journey. And I think that matters because it affects, how we make decisions and kind of shapes how we think about things. So I'd love for you to just tell a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey, kind of where you've come from and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, straight out of high school, I joined the U.S. Navy, and I was a Navy journalist. I wasn't necessarily very good at journalism, but it was an honor to serve, and I got to get my feet wet, I'd say, in what it means to interview people, tell stories, that sort of thing. From there, studied family science in college, and my goal was to be a love doctor on the radio. And but I got distracted with the internet, and so I kind of started doing internet development, which led to a number of businesses. Some failed, and some failed pretty spectacularly. And as a result, I went through all kinds of pain financially. Lost homes, bankruptcy, all of that stuff in the quest to learn how to become successful in business. So I've been there, and I know what it's like to not succeed in business. I know what it's like to be obscure, and it's not a very good feeling. And so when I launched SavingsAngel, which I launched about over 12 years ago, I had learned quite a bit from all of my failures. And one thing that I learned was that exposure is everything. You can have the best business idea in the world, but if people don't know about you, it doesn't matter if you make the best cookies on the planet. Like, you legit have devised the most successful cookies on the planet. If nobody knows about it, you're not going to sell any cookies.
That's right.
So, and that would be a crime because I love a good cookie, even though I try to eat keto as much as possible. So in my case, I didn't have any money for advertising. Social media was still in its infancy. And so what I did is I just reached out to everybody that I could that had an audience. And that was bloggers, that was radio stations, TV stations, newspapers, anyone I possibly could. And I said, look, I don't have any money to advertise, but could I be of service to your audience? And this is what I'd like to do. And enough of them said yes. That I started just producing a lot of content. I became a consumer expert. SavingsAngel, we help people cut their grocery bill in half. And I developed this persona of, beyond my total imposter syndrome, I just got really good at saving money. And so, but I didn't want to be super miserly. I just wanted to learn hacks. Like, I really was into life hacks and figuring out, like, is it possible to get upgrades at hotels? Is it possible to cut your grocery bill in half? And so I found out, and I would research all of this stuff, and then I would teach it. And it's not about, I think success in business isn't necessarily about being really good at sales. It's about, do you have a heart of a servant? Do you like serving people? And are you an okay teacher? If you're an okay teacher and you keep showing up and serving, you're probably going to do okay in business. And SavingsAngel, as a result, did okay in business. We were a membership-based website for the first 10 years. And we ended up doing well over $6 million in revenue. And, we built we had six-figure months. And we did that with less than $500 in advertising. Everything we did was just serving audiences. I've been in the media over 2,000 times, became a syndicated newspaper columnist, syndicated TV host. Locally here in Orlando, I've been on air over 700 times as a consumer expert. And matter of fact, right after this interview, I've got Fox 35 coming over, and I actually need to do 2 separate stories for them regarding some consumer headlines that broke. So it's nice. Like, they can count on me. I love stuff in that, like, they know who I am. They know I'm a good guest, so they know they can count on me over and over and over again. And it's good for SavingsAngel because it's great visibility.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's so neat to hear, stories like that where you're trying to figure out a path and then you find an area. One of the things you
Yeah.
mentioned there that you kind of just mentioned it in passing, but I want to highlight on it because I think it's interesting. You talked about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And
Please.
I think I've been hearing that kind of come up a lot lately with a lot of different entrepreneurs and going, gosh, am I really good enough to do this thing or that thing? How do you feel like you've kind of overcome that and worked through it? Because I think that's a real thing for a lot of people.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of funny because I was just listening to, I love listening to podcasts. I was just listening to Dr. Phil's podcast, like Fill in the Blanks. And so you can say what you want about Dr. Phil, but he actually had a pretty good point. He's like, we build our self-esteem based on our judgment of past experiences. And so I think that's kind of what it takes. It was really interesting. I do remember the moment that I considered myself. I really did. When I showed up and I did my first radio segment, I was just like, who am I? I didn't go to school for this. I mean, I don't know who goes to school for consumer studies anyway,
Right.
to learn how to save money and, become a life hacker. But I remember totally like, man, someone's going to call me out and they're going to say, you're no expert at this. Where's your degree? And by the way, like I've been through this recently and, as we kind of get into my, what the company I launched 5 years ago as a result of all of this experience. But I remember Trevor, who was one of the morning hosts, he asked me a question. He goes, so are you a consumer expert? And I kind of looked to the left, looked to the right, and I'm like, yes, I am. And that was the day I became a consumer expert. Like somebody had to ask me that.
Right.
And I'm like, I guess I am. And, so here's how you overcome imposter syndrome. You just have to keep having little successes. When you get recognized, like let's say you host a little workshop, maybe your people ask you questions in Facebook groups, like you will work past the imposter syndrome. I promise you. Look, there's always going to be people that are more successful than you, but that's okay because
that's right.
You don't need to do exactly what they do. But if you niche in a very specific field, like let's say you're a Facebook ads manager and you only work with dentists, then you can be the best dentist Facebook ad manager on the planet. And you know what? I'll tell you what, that combination right there, you're probably going to make a ton of money as well. And that's, I think, what the world wants to know. Can you solve my very, very specific problem? And if you can solve my very, very specific problem, then you could do very, very well.
Yeah, I love that. I think a lot of it goes back, I forget who coined this originally. It's in some book, but this idea of like the curse of knowledge. And it's this belief that what you know is not as valuable as you think it actually is.
Oh,
and a lot of people, and then when you have to start unpacking it and teaching it, though, you realize how many steps there are to get through all these things that you just take for granted because you've been doing them for however long. And it's like, well, of course I know how to do these things. And other people are like, but that's revolutionary. And you're like, no, it's not. I've been doing it for a decade.
My wife and I both studied family science, family therapy in college. And, something as simple as reflective listening, I'm blown away that people don't know what that is, because we know that when we get into conflict, we need to do reflective listening. Otherwise, it's going to escalate. And reflective listening is just making sure that the other person is heard. And most of the times in arguments and disagreement, like people just want to be heard.
That's right.
And so, just the simple act of, when my wife says something, I just say, so what you're saying is, and then I rephrase it in a way, and I try not to put my own spin on it, but
That's
I
the
just
hard part.
let her know, okay, I heard what you said. And, just that simple exercise makes a huge difference. And it's funny, like when that's come up in conversation, like how many people are like, whoa, yeah. I'm like, really? Like I learned that when I was like 22. And, but yeah, so, you're absolutely right. Good teachers just give. They assume the audience knows nothing. And you know what? Chances are they kind of don't, in most topics. So, which, surprised me. Like I can get pretty 101 level on like public relations or, communications or all that kind of stuff. And I'm blown away, how little of this people truly understand and what a huge impact, working on their authority would make.
Yeah, no, I think that's huge. You know, it was interesting. I was at a event a couple of years ago out in California. It was called Vid Summit, and Gary
Yeah.
Vaynerchuk was one of the speakers there, and he was talking about this very same thing. And he basically said, "Look, all of you are looking around this room and seeing all these, you know, uber successful YouTube stars, and you're thinking, oh, I've missed the boat. I don't know anything. I don't know anything compared to these people." And he said, "What you're forgetting is everybody that's here in this room right now still knows like 100 times more than 98% of the entire world population, you know,
Yeah.
and you just forget about these things." So I always think that's really interesting. What I'd love to do in this conversation, if you're okay with it, is get into some like real tactical stuff for people that could be really helpful.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, I had a guy on the show recently who did a lot of work with offshoring virtual assistants, and he had some really great, like, here's practically how to hire people all over the world, and here's how this works, here's how it's worked for me, and it was really great advice versus just getting in his story. I want to hear your story too, but I think you've got so much wisdom and knowledge in these areas, talking about getting in front of, you know, audiences. And I think about, like, you know, you being on, you know, 700 TV shows or whatever it is. Like for me, I mean, I've been in business for 20 years. I don't think I've ever been on TV. Man, that's not true. I had like one or two little things that I was on, you know, but I have no plan around it. You know, I have no intentionality for it. And I think sometimes people just forget about what you were talking about earlier, which is that exposure is everything. And one of the things that I do get a lot, thankfully, due to social media, is people locally especially will say, "Man, Jay, I just feel like I see you everywhere." And I'm like, great. That means I'm doing my job.
Yeah.
And I feel like if business owners are not hearing that, they should be, because they need to find the place so that people do feel like they're seeing them everywhere, because that's how you stay in front of an audience so that you can sell the best cookie.
Yeah, you know, and look, I'm certainly no mega influencer, but it's amazing because, you know, everything that we provide, you know, just kind of part two of this story with my background, just so you know who I have the credentials to talk about this, is that, you know, with my 2000 media placements, I started doing pro bono work in our local startup community. And because I just think that when you get successful, Jay, I know you do amazing work in terms of just giving and serving audiences. And I think that that's what we should do as successful business leaders, is do that. But it was interesting because as I started doing all this pro bono work, workshops, started doing more speaking, I was getting more and more people were like, "Man, this is really great. You know, I appreciate all this advice, but, you know, can I hire you?" And I was like, "Well, I guess, you know," and so I could certainly solve that problem for you. And so, yeah, Up My Influence is what grew from that. And so now we've got over 20 people on the team with Up My Influence. And it's simply because I think, and we'll talk about this, consumer trends are moving toward, you know, what you just referenced, Jay, was being seen everywhere is one of those indicators of authority. Mm-hmm. Consumers are more resistant to engaging with brands than ever before because there's just so much noise. And we've all wasted time with things, and we're protective of our time. We're just constantly bombarded with messages and brands. American Marketing Association estimates the average consumer is exposed to over 10,000 brand messages a day. Wow. So it's all over us. And so to rise above the noise, you got to build up your know, like, and trust. And that really revolves around authority today. People are going to check you out. Guarantee, Jay, before you and I engaged, you know, we probably checked out each other's website, like, who's this Josh Elledge guy? And, you know, so you kind of looked into that. I checked out, you know, your social media. And every time people do that, they're making judgments. And those judgments are going to impact whether or not they engage.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are some ideas for people? Maybe they've been in business for a little while, but they have no idea how to get influence or how to be seen. They're barely even figured out the whole social media thing. Where should somebody even start when it comes to things like that?
Well, look, I think the easiest thing that somebody can do is start branding themselves personally. This is not hard to do. And so what am I talking about? Well, look, you may or may not. The reality is you may or may not be at the helm of your current business 10 years from now, but you will always be you. And so your personal brand goes with you wherever you go. And if you have a strong personal brand and you've taken this very seriously and you've invested in your own personal authority, it's kind of like having really good inner core strength. Like everything you do physically is just going to be easier. So, and your business may evolve, it may pivot, you may pivot, that sort of thing. So what does that look like? Well, today, you look at where are the water coolers that people are engaging? Like, how are people bumping into you today? So largely today, that's of course on social media. So your Facebook, Instagram, maybe Twitter, maybe YouTube. These are all big watering holes. Like there's lots of people there. So everybody is showing up with an identity. And so it's kind of like online dating. Now, if you put, let's say you set up a Tinder profile, and you put your profile image and your profile and you just completely half-ass it. Like it's just like your picture is just like some dumb selfie looking up at, if I did that, maybe looking up on my double chin or something like that. And it's all blurry and like, what is pretty much everyone, I don't need to, I've been married 24 years, so I haven't needed to do this. But I would imagine.
Likewise not to either.
Yeah. So if I were to, if I were in a position where I'd have to do that, you better believe I would invest in good photography. Why? Well, psychology and science agree. People make like a million judgments in a snap, like as quickly as I snap my finger. People build this whole, it's like they could tell a story about you just based on seeing your picture for a split second. Yeah. And it's really interesting. It's a psychological phenomenon. It's really interesting. We all pride ourselves on being an amazing judge of character, and everyone believes that they are somehow more skilled at judging people than other people. Like we all think we just have this like X-Men mutant ability to read people. And so we see this like on TV shows, movies, like we like some characters and we don't like other characters. Why do you do that? How do you do that? Well, what are you looking for? You're looking for poker tells. So, so someone is either listening to the sound of my voice or seeing me in video, they're making judgments. The fact that I've got an Apple Watch or I'm wearing a black wedding band, or like they're looking at the quality of my camera, or they're looking at, well, what's going on in the background there? Oh, he's wearing a black shirt, with an open collar, it's like all of that stuff, like their brain is going nuts and they're like building this idea of who I am. They're listening to the confidence in the sound of my voice, my energy, and they are deciding whether or not this is someone that is earning their respect, earning their time. Mm-hmm. And so, all of us lead with our digital profiles. Most commerce is not done person to person. Like, I mean, in our audience, or someone who's likely listening to the show, chances are you're doing business online. And so what we have now is a digital barrier. And so our job at Up My Influence and what we encourage people to do is you have to be aware of what those digital barriers are, and you need to lead with an amazing dating profile so people aren't swiping left on you right away. They are intrigued, and you want to they don't need to swipe right away, but they at least need to spend a little bit more time, check out your profile, get to know you a little bit even before they make a decision, and then they might make a small swipe to the right, and that small swipe might mean a response back to an email or a click on your ad or whatever. But people are judging. People are judging everybody on all this stuff. It really, really, really matters. So getting a photographer, is it worth the money? Absolutely. $100, $200, $300, get headshots done. I promise you that's going to be about the best money you're going to spend early on in business. You could take cell phone pictures. Those aren't bad. But I believe in investing in personal brand just because I've seen amazing things that have come from it.
Yeah, I think it's huge for individuals. I just made the same recommendation to a company earlier. We were doing a big marketing consult this morning, and the guy builds these beautiful custom kitchens, but he doesn't have great photos. And I'm like, man, you're building.
That's a no-brainer,
right? You're building kitchens. I mean, they're okay, but they could be amazing, right? And you're building kitchens that are $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000.
Wow.
Spend a couple $100 and get the best photographer in your area to get those photos. But this applies to you as well. I think a lot of people miss this. It was interesting. We were looking at some websites the other day, and you couldn't tell anything about the people that ran that company at all. And I thought, it just feels like a robot sitting out there. And when you think about personal brands, there's so much value, not just for like what you're doing now, but like you said, like you don't know what you're going to be doing in 5 or 10 years, and you got to lay that groundwork now.
Listen, people don't necessarily connect with brands, particularly small brands. Large brands, sure, Apple and Disney, that sort of thing, that's fine. But generally for small brands, it's going to be a people-to-people thing. And so many of us, you might be shy, you might have the imposter syndrome going on, you might be, oh, I'm an introvert. Like, I get it. Like, I know all those challenges. Okay. Building your computer or building your business from behind your computer screen, like you can get the wheels in motion, but you're only going to get so far. Eventually, and you can probably even get to 6 figures. But if you want to go from 6 to 7 figures, it's going to take a whole different, someone needs to lead the company publicly. And so you're going to have to be the face for your company. And some people hate to say that, but Jay, I mean, that's why we exist, Jay. I mean, I know you do, you guys do amazing work in this as well, is just to, kind of work on that brand. But, it's really critical. And you can you can argue with me all day long, but at the end of the day, let's look at the results and let's look at what happens to your conversion rate. Let's take a look at what happens to your inbound leads. Let's take a look at what happens to your sales cycles. All of those things are going to improve. Your word of mouth, your referrals, all this stuff, like engagement, speaker invites, influencers reaching out, wanting to do business with you, media wanting to reach out and connect with you. All of these things are going to improve as you start working on your personal branding, indicators of authority. It's just natural. This is the currency. Authority is the currency of today's digital economy.
Yeah, I totally am behind that, believe in it. I mean, that's why that's part of the reason why I'm doing this podcast, is the podcast and my book are personal branding pieces for me personally. Even though I run a successful marketing agency that's been here for 20 years, the agency by itself is perfectly fine. But the reality is people connect to me personally as a brand more than they ever will the company as a whole. And the people here are who they connect with anyway. And I'm the figurehead for the company. So that's the same things that we're doing. But the other thing I would say to people that may be listening as well, because I think this is important, is like you're crushing it in these areas because you've got, like right now, you've got great lighting, you got a great camera, you got your name overlaid with your, Twitter handle and your, web address. Like all those little things are super smart. And what some people I think make the mistake in doing is going, hey, I don't have all of the things perfect yet, so I'm not going to launch. And I always tell them, like, look, like right now, my podcast recording room is under construction over here in this room over here, and I'm kind of makeshifted in our conference room. I could have better audio. I could have better video. I could have better lighting. I could have rescheduled our podcast. I'm like, no, I'm going to launch it. We're going to get it done. We're going to move forward. And the next one I shoot in the next room, it's going to look better. And I think that's another thing too, is people need to look at stuff. And I think you'd probably agree with this, and go, look, what's the one most important thing? And you gave them great advice already. Like, start with a photographer. If you don't have a great headshot, do that first. I'd love to hear from you. Like you obviously, you had SavingsAngel, you got Up My Influence, you got a lot of different things going on. You got people that work with you and for you, and you got a lot of different connections. But along the way, I'm sure you've had some instances where things have maybe not gone as planned.
Yeah. So
maybe, I'm just assuming.
Yes, of course. I mean, that's the thing, it's, double your rate of failure and fail fast. It's interesting. So we do a lot of influencer outreach at Up My Influence. It's a huge industry. Influencer marketing was about $2 billion in volume in 2017. It's expected to be $10 billion in the year 2020. So obviously, we've been doing a lot of this work, but we're not perfect at it yet. Like we're still we want to be the best in the world at this. We've sent out thousands and thousands and thousands of invites to influencers, and we're not happy with our conversion rate. But what's really nice now, and I just had a conversation with one of my directors on this, who's responsible for this, is I said, we're like Thomas Edison. Like we've figured out, thousands of ways not to reach out to influencers. Like we're getting good at it, but we still feel like, oh, come on, we should be able to do better than this. And so, we now have the hindsight. And that hindsight is so valuable. Like, we don't have to go through that anymore. And, we're learning like these little tweaks in language make a huge difference. And so we've been experimenting for over a year. And so now, in terms of like, if you want influencers to work with you, like, we're going to save you a year's worth of making mistakes. And to a company that it doesn't have a whole lot of time to waste, that's where it makes sense to hire an agency or to hire a professional who's already been testing this out for quite some time.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit, actually. The idea of finding areas where you go, okay, this is not something that I'm really strong at. I'm going to hand this off to somebody else. Maybe it's something as simple as an accountant. I mean, I did my own books for years and then eventually said, okay, I need to have a professional take care of this.
Right.
You're talking about influencers, but just in general, like, where have you found over the years that you've kind of gone, hey, these are areas that are not strengths for me. I'm going to hand these off. These are areas that are, I need to double down on my time here.
Yeah. I'm pretty much a devotee of Michael Gerber E-Myth philosophy. And, pretty much, again, we kind of use the example of, you make great cookies. And let's say someone says, you really need to make these amazing keto cookies and sell them to the world. Well, if you spend all your time baking cookies, who's growing the company? That's right. I hate this mythology out there that all you have to do is just produce good stuff and you'll get discovered and you'll be wildly successful. Sorry to say, that's not how it works. We deal with this. We have clients that are creatives pretty frequently. And it's kind of it's interesting. Like, we see this a lot more in America than we do in a lot of other countries, because we have some international clients. Americans are the worst at this. They think that, and it's because we just love this rags to riches story. Do, yeah. It's in every, it's in just like every movie, every TV show. Like, we love that. And, where someone gets discovered. Getting discovered, again, it's kind of like that Jim Carrey, so you're saying there's a chance. It's like a 1 in a million. It can happen.
Right.
But I wouldn't waste, I wouldn't put my livelihood and my, whether or not I'm going to be successful in business on being discovered, because it just doesn't happen that way. You have to make discovery happen. And how absolutely. You make discovery happen is that you take your brand seriously, and then you start connecting with other people. You start networking. Don't go after the big dogs. Leave them alone if you're early stage in your business, but just go, try to find ways to collaborate with other business owners and just completely get rid of the notion that there's any competition. Competition, I think, is for losers. We're all completely unique. There's no clones that I know of. There's no human clones where two people are doing the exact same thing. So your clients may choose someone else in your industry over you because it's a better fit or they resonated with that person. But that's okay. You don't have to serve every single person in your industry. You have to serve the people that you want to serve, your avatar, better than anybody else, and you'll win. So yeah, in answer to your question, what do I do? The only thing I try to do is get on stages, serve audiences, be the face for the company, be the face on social media, be the one that's in front of the camera for our YouTube videos, podcasts, and it's just whatever, like the front facing stuff. The one-to-many stuff. And, if I'm spending all my time in operations, then I am doing the world a disservice, because the world needs to learn about us. I have a mission. And if I don't introduce our solution to the world, I know that business owners are going to fail. They're going to stagnate, and they're going to be so frustrated. It's because I did not do my job well enough to work hard to introduce some concepts and ideas to them.
I love that. One of my favorite lines that you said, that maybe one of my favorite podcast lines ever, which is competition is for losers.
It really is, because
I think that's so true.
You'll never win.
When I see people that are like totally obsessed with like what other people around them are doing, I'm like, if you're so worried about what they're doing, you're like a year behind, because you're only seeing what they planned a year ago. And for me, I'm like, people are like, oh, what do you know about competition? I'm like, I don't have any competition. Like, there's other people that do similar things to what we do. They're not competition. The people I can learn from, people that can learn from me. That's great. There's plenty of efficiency.
Yeah. We promote other people that are very similar to what we do.
Right.
all the time. And, here's audiences who see that you are kind of above the fray. They trust you now because you are giving them, what feels like the honest, unbiased, like, hey, let me introduce you to this or that. Like, I had someone ask me about press releases, and I said, well, we do them, and here's the advantage to working with us. Or, if you only need this, dude, just go do that yourself. You don't need us for that. Right. And here's how to do it. Matter of fact, I'll give you some shortcuts because we've tested everybody, and I'll tell you exactly who not to waste your money on and who's pretty legit in the space. And so, I don't, now he's like, man, dude, that was like really awesome of you. Thank you so much. So the more people you can legitimately, authentically serve with your truth, like, then the more people they're going to trust you, and they're going to come back to you, and they're going to refer business to you. Jay, I know you do a ton of word of mouth business, like, and people love you, your clients love you, and they talk about you to everybody. That's kind of, what our goal is. We just had our house painted, and it was about the same price as the other painters. But he's just, the service was way better. Yeah. And he said, look, here's our model. We spend much more time, much more labor, much more, like, we do a lot of stuff that the competition doesn't do. But the thing is we now don't have to invest in advertising. Those guys do a crappier job. They have higher margins, but they don't get the word of mouth. So they have to advertise. They have to constantly advertise to get new business. Now, the downside of the higher margins, more advertising model is when they stop advertising, they have to keep advertising. Otherwise, they don't get new business. Whereas word of mouth, he's invested in his reputation, his relationships. He's good for life.
Yeah. And a lot of that too comes down to like knowing what an ideal client is for you as well. I think that's really important for people to think about and know. If they can't outline that really clearly in a few sentences, they probably need to work on that because, like in the example that you gave of the guy helping with the press release, he probably maybe wasn't yet an ideal client for you and all the things that you guys do, but he could be in the future. And so it's to everybody's benefit. Just be like, hey, let me give you a little tip. I mean, there are 1,000 times, there's probably more times that I'll do something like that with somebody than I would actually even charge them for anything. At some point I'm like, look, it doesn't make sense. Let me just give you some advice. Just go do this, try this, try this. And they're like, oh my gosh, thanks so much. And it didn't cost me anything. And in the same time period, I'm basically building my own reputation and my own brand, even though I'm not intentionally like trying to use that to leverage against people, but it's just the nature of like being a good person. And the other thing that you were talking about too, I think is so important, is this idea of like building relationships. I think this is where people mess social media up so much, is that social media is no different than like, I don't know, any other like old networking environment, in that you never want to walk into a networking room and just start handing out your business card and say, take my card, take my card, take my card, take my card. Yeah. But that's how people treat social media. And you're like, stop telling people to buy from you and just be a person that you'd actually want to be around.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because we've all been in that social situation where we get that motor mouth that comes up to you and just starts going into robo pitch mode. And you kind of like looking, you're like, look, are you even like, can you see me? Like, are you like
a script?
Like all of a sudden you just started going into your pitch. I'm like, let's talk person to person here. Yeah. But yeah, I think people feel a little cheated when you just kind of, you talk at them as opposed to truly like trying to find ways that you can bring value. And I don't mean to overuse that phrase, but at least ask and answer questions.
One thing I want to tie back to and ask you a little bit more to dig in on, because you seem to be passionate about it, is when you talked about your mission for why you do what you do. I think that's one thing that a lot of people kind of maybe just haven't thought about in a lot of depth. So I'd love to hear from you, like why your mission matters and why it's, I always say to our team, we don't just put pixels on the screen. Like we're not just writing words to put on paper. Like we're helping other people grow their business to change their lives. Like that's significant. It's not just like the stuff that we do. So tell me about your mission, why that, how you kind of came about that, and why you think that might be important for other people to really understand in their business.
Well, so again, with SavingsAngel, and I started getting these invites, and I really wasn't in the market to start a new business. But I started looking at my background, and I personally had some bad experiences with some investments in terms of public relations. I blew 25 grand hiring PR. And I got one good introduction to a reporter, and I got to speak at a lawn and garden show. And that was my $25,000. Wow. And I heard story after story of other people with similar experiences. And then I said, well, meanwhile, like I've gotten in the media over 2,000 times, like I know how to do this. And it's one of those things that I guess most business owners don't know how to do this. And so it's like, well, all right, let me look at who I am on the planet. So been in the media over 2,000 times, made a lot of money doing it. I love teaching. I love serving. How many other people have those credentials on the planet? And so I started thinking, that's probably not more than, I don't know, a couple dozen. I don't know. And so I kind of started to realize, look, I have to do this. It's like God, or, however you will explain it, you get these experiences, and I think they're for a reason. And it's understanding that. And you ask yourself the question, what is the consequence, or what consequences might happen if your clients or your customers don't find out about you? What happens in their life? What happens if they choose someone else, or they try to solve the problem that you solve, and they try to solve it a different, ineffective way? Maybe it's another service provider. Maybe it's they try and do it themselves. What do they lose as a result? So how much heartbreak, how much time can you save them? How can you make their life better? And so, you start thinking about, you got to think about the customer, and you got to think about who you serve. And as you start to reflect on that, you're probably going to get to a point where you're like, oh my gosh, I gotta move quickly, because my inaction is leading to pain, and I need to do what I can to stop pain from happening.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable stuff people got to think through. A mission and why you do what you do is just absolutely critical. We're running out of time, so there's three final things I'd love to wrap up with. One is I love to talk about work-life balance and what that even means to you. The second will be, how do you continue to learn and grow yourself when you're so busy pouring into others? And the third is just kind of any final thoughts on where people can find you. So let's start on the first one. Work-life balance. What does it even mean to you? It means something different to everybody else. Right. And how has that kind of morphed and changed in your life through different seasons? I know you've got, wife and kids and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I'm always out of balance, and I'm okay with that. When I remember when I was under stress about, oh gosh, there's a big push because of business, and I'm not spending enough time with my kids during this season. I'd start hearing cats in the cradle in the back of my head, and I'd start feeling guilty that I'm a lousy dad. But the reality is, like, wait a minute. No, I'm not. Yeah. Like this during the week, so right now we're in the middle of a huge product launch, developing that. And so I'm working 12, 16-hour days. And, so I'm not spending a whole lot of time I've got 3 amazing kids. They're a little bit older. So, I don't have to babysit them as much anymore. They're content doing their thing.
That's right.
But you better believe that I'm going to block off time, and I'm going to do one-on-one stuff with them. I may not be spending, 3 hours a day with each of them. But I make it up on a Saturday or a Sunday. I block off, hey, Wednesday night, I'm cutting it down right now. And I work in bursts. So when I'm with my family, I don't constantly look at my phone. I'm not that guy. I'm just, I feel like, I can live my life in compartments.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Just, that was, who was that was talking about? Dale Carnegie, I think, talked about that. So you compartmentalize, you learn to compartmentalize better. And I found that the case that most successful people, they are constantly, really focused on whatever it is that they're doing, whether that's relaxation. And look, I watch Game of Thrones. I'm a total Marvel geek. I've probably watched, good, I'd say 30 hours of YouTube videos all about Avengers Endgame coming out as we're recording this right now, which, is actually it's 72 hours away is when I get you can tell I've been looking forward to it. I game, I do all that stuff.
Right.
But in terms of my productivity, I don't know anybody in my immediate circle that can outwork me.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I think that one of the chapters of my book is ignore the system, but have a system. And the idea behind it is basically like what works for you might not work for me. And what works for my marriage might not work for your marriage. And what works for me and my kids might not work for you and your kids and my business and your business. And I think one of the big mistakes a lot of people make is they go, well, so-and-so does this, this, and this. I'm like, look, maybe there's something you can learn from that. And maybe there's something helpful you can draw from it. Like, for example, one of the things you said, which is kind of the idea of where I am is where I am. Like if I'm watching a movie, I'm watching a movie. If I'm with my kids, I'm with my kids. If I'm working, I'm working, and I'll out hustle anybody. But you are intentional about going, hey, I'm choosing to spend the time on this thing right now because it is my priority. Right. And I think that's what people have to be willing to go. So this is my priority right now.
Yeah. And it's so helpful when you love what you do. Honestly, it's, my productivity when I'm at work, I don't get distracted with social media, or whatever. Right. Like I'm at work because I feel like so much joy in creating and doing what I'm doing. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's the same thing. Like today, I literally have I had a 4-hour marketing workshop this morning that I taught. I got this podcast. I got a 2-hour one after that. And then I'm teaching a group one tonight for 3 hours. That's a full day. Like there's no question about it, but I'm excited about it. Like I'm not like, oh my gosh, I have a full day of work. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
Like,
no,
I'm
right.
stoked. Like it's great,
Yeah. Right. One thing I don't like on social media, it just annoys the heck out of me is like, well, I'm not watching Game of Thrones because I'm too busy hustling.
I know.
All right, brother. You do you.
But I always say this is a perfect example. Is because Gary Vaynerchuk's like this a lot. He's like, oh, I don't watch TV and I don't play the video games. Yeah, but you love the Jets. Like he loves the New York Jets. And so he doesn't miss a single game. Football's his thing. He's at the draft. Like I don't care that much about that. But I do like to watch Netflix with my wife. So whatever. Like you do you.
I don't need any judgment. Like I'm good. Like I know what's good for me. And I'm pretty happy with how, my life. So I think it's the self-righteousness that I especially don't care for.
I hear you. Me too. All right, cool. So two last things. One is where you kind of continue to grow and learn yourself, and the last is where people can find you. So the first one, where do you continue to grow and learn? Is there a particular place or just kind of all over the place?
I am obsessively learning. I mean, that's one of my core values. My biggest core value is growth. And I would feel, I have to, like, I'm an obsessive audio listener. So I listen to a lot of audio books, a lot of podcasts. I listen to a ton of podcasts. I listen to a lot of YouTube videos. So, I got YouTube Red so that I can turn off the video and just listen to it in the car. I think YouTube videos tend to be pretty punchy in terms of content. So I'll just put together, like, I know I'm going to be driving. Bam, 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 bam. I'll put together a playlist of YouTube videos of things I want to learn. And then I'm just like constantly bringing it all in. I'm a big audio consumer. Love music, love listening. And I love it because I can do other things like drive or walk my doggy. By the way, I take my doggy on a 30-minute walk or something. Like I'm out, quite a bit as well. And that's my me time.
Right. That's awesome. I love audio stuff as well. Audiobooks that really have just kind of I'm a very slow reader, but audiobooks are great for me because I can just put the book on. And then if I really like it, I'll buy the physical book and then take notes on it and all that kind of stuff. So
love it.
Josh, I just really appreciate your insight. It's been great. I'm really excited to see how the audience uses this. I know I'm probably going to be stealing some ideas and getting some insight, maybe even consulting with you as well, because I think you could probably benefit what I am doing myself a lot. So I'm excited about that. But in the meantime, where is the best place for people to find you? They want to learn a bit more about you, what you do. Where should they go?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's great. I mean, you can learn about me if you want to, but one thing that we put together that I think would be really, really helpful in personalizing the information that I was talking about is we put together a quiz, and it'll give you your authority scores. So it'll go through and kind of give you a self-assessment, and that's at upmyinfluence.com/quiz. Take a free quiz, and at the end, I recorded a bunch of different videos based on what your score is, and I'm going to give you some advice on what to do based on wherever you score. And we're just going to go through all of your indicators of authority and try and figure out where you are right now and where you go from here.
That's awesome. I think that'll be really cool. I'm going to go check that out myself. Everybody, make sure you go try that quiz, upmyinfluence.com/quiz. Josh, thank you so much for being on the show today. It really has been a pleasure.
Oh, Jay, it's awesome. Thank you so much.
Hey, I hope this video has helped you with some tips and ideas to build a business that lasts. Make sure you subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss out on the next videos that we roll out. And more importantly, for some awesome free resources, head over to our website at buildingabusinessthatlasts.com. You can get a free copy of my book there where I tell you how I have built an agency that's grown year over year for the last 20 years in a row. So go grab that, buildingabusinessthatlasts.com, and make sure to subscribe to our channel. Thanks. We'll see you soon.